You're listening to a podcast of Reelblack Radio with Mike D and Steph Renee. Fridays 11 a.m. till noon on 900 AM WURD and 900 AM WURD.com.
Again, from the album Evolver from John Legend, that's a duet with Brandy. It's called Quickly, and I hope you heard those lyrics because, you know, I don't necessarily always plan this. Luckily, I keep a good assortment of music already on my iPod that addresses these things. But sometimes the lyrics seem to be much more necessary. And in times like this, when they're talking about the country's warring, that we're warring, and it's really important for us in this moment to understand how important it is to love one another and to love one another with a sense of urgency that we don't always place in our relationships or place in our lives, that we do not know what happens next. And with all the other things that are going on around us, that we have got to put love at the center of the solution. And I think that's a message that we can use 24/7, 365 and a quarter all the time. This is Stephanie Renee welcoming you back to today's Mojo. And now joining me at the broadcast table is Mike Dennis. How are you doing, sir?
I'm well, as good as can be expected on a day like this. It's, you know, up all night watching the news.
That's not good for your mental health.
Well,
and then I'm serious. I mean, and I understand why. I'm just saying that seeing some of the images that we've seen this week over and over again, and then seeing some of these developing news stories, at some point, you sort of have to unplug.
I intentionally, people when the first videos were being passed around, they said don't watch them, and I intentionally didn't watch them because I it's sort of like more of the same, like, oh, here we go again. You know, it must be Groundhog's Day, But, I'm just a little frustrated by the news coverage that's been happening with this Dallas shooting because, I guess first they posted a black guy as a potential suspect. And he wasn't really a suspect. And then they had this guy cornered. Now, obviously, you're getting news as it's happening, so there's going to be some misinformation and you're not going to get all the information. They don't have their story straight yet. But for them not to say who the suspect is. Now, this guy that...
it's suspects.
But the one who's dead, who they blew up, they haven't announced his name.
Yes, they have.
Oh, they have?
2 minutes ago.
Oh, 2 minutes ago.
That's why you got to be logged on to Twitter.
Okay.
He is identified as Micah Johnson, 25 years old.
Okay. All right, so I'm assuming Mike is a brother. And
I'm assuming so too.
Mad at white people. I mean, but the first thing they put out is like he was angry at white people. So it's just given the Fox Newses of the world all kinds of free liberty just to say whatever they want about anything and tie it to this Black Lives Matter movement. And I just think that's irresponsible journalism. So.
Yeah. And, there's a lot involved in that. And, as you sat down at the table, one of the things that I thought was really important is that we are dealing with generations now of people who are somehow trying to process this level of violence against the community and how we overcome all different kinds of socioeconomic, ethnic, these perceived boundaries between us and join together as a community to really begin to solve this. And there's a lot of documentation and Reelblack screens films regularly that bring us into a space where we're watching either forgotten documentaries or, films that are part of a canon of which we should be aware and investing in if it's available on DVD, like buying them so we have them at home and we can, especially for the, God bless parents this week who are trying to explain to their children or to their teenagers why they might be so fearful when they leave the house in the morning and, in the summertime and all of this. And so having some films that people can sit down and watch as families and sort of process what's going on, can be really useful, I think.
We can discuss certainly some of the work that's out there that has sort of alluded to the situation that's occurring again. The movie, but this seems to be like a double standard. When it's not a person of color shooting stuff up, then it's a lone gunman or this guy's crazy or whatever. Just to tie the situation, even though it's orchestrated as several shooters, into the entire Black Lives Movement is just really sickening. And what the press is doing, they're really working hard to incite race riots or whatever, and instill martial law. And I think that's horrible when, things have come close. I mean, but, I think black folks have always kind of turned the other cheek to a certain extent. And when we have had narrative movies that sort of have touched on these topics, they tend to be told from a white patriarchal point of view. So like, one movie that's on YouTube that is worth a look is called Shoot It. Shoot It Black, Shoot It Blue. It's from, I think, 1971. It's got Eric Lawneville in it. And it's based on a novel, but it's a very interesting premise. It's Eric Lawneville, who was later, I think, in The White Shadow. He's a young actor.
I was going to say, I knew the name sounded familiar.
He plays a young college student who's studying film, and he's got an assignment to do. And he's filming out his window, and he sees a white cop, basically execute a black guy, point blank. The guy has his hands up or whatever, don't shoot, and shoots him, and he films it. And then he goes around and he follows the cop and films different things in his life, basically to the point where he films his confession, like saying that he killed it. But it's not a perfect movie in the sense that, for one, it's told from the cop's point of view. So it's really like an existential thing, about this guy's existence, as opposed to what I think was really needed at the time. 1971 would have been much more interesting if it was told from the black student's point of view. But then it was done independently, and it took some time to make, and they tacked on this revolutionary vengeance ending, which, it just feels tacked on. It doesn't feel like part of the thing. But, this is 1971. They're talking about similar things, filming police brutality and putting out into the mainstream. And clearly this kind of stuff it's always been there. It's just now we have the cameras. So
Well, but I think it's really important also to consider it from that perspective, right? Because I think that there are a lot of people who take for granted at this stage of where we are as a humanity that everybody's got this technology on their hips that they can easily pull out and document this. In 71, this film you're talking about, to be able to film an officer shooting somebody required a film camera that was only, in certain households, and, kind of how that unfolds. Right. It's important to have that conversation, I think, with young people about, that it's timely for us to look at a piece like this again with those kinds of eyes and reiterate some of this necessary conversation.
Definitely. But we have the cameras. I mean, from Rodney King on, we had the cameras, and the system still lets people off. Generally, police aren't persecuted for this type of behavior, and it builds up. Builds up to the point where you get things like this today. Another movie that's interesting, a lot of people probably have seen, is The Glass Shield with Ice Cube. Directed by who's my guy who did Killer Sheep, Charles Burnett.
Yes.
And that's inspired by the Rampart police situation in Los Angeles, but it's an interesting movie. Michael Beach plays a young rookie cop who basically, gets indoctrinated into this white police force, which is extremely corrupt. And, he's got to make these, got a crisis of conscience. Does he stand behind the glass shield or speak out for what's right? And Ice Cube, has a supporting role. He's a guy who gets arrested and accused of some things, and Beach knows the truth, but it's sort of how far will these corrupt cops go to protect their thing. So
I mean, as you mentioned that, I realized that I've seen that film, and there's so many things that circulate around in my mind. I remember, when Selma first came out, Ava DuVernay came in for a screening of the film at the Ritz, 5, and we had the responsibility and pleasure of allowing some of the teens that we were working with on our Youth Words program to come in and see the film, and then we talk to them on camera about how they were processing it, how they were feeling. And, it is something, as someone who was born just after all of these civil rights wins that we achieved as a community that have been systematically chipped away at during my lifetime. So I don't have a visceral memory of that struggle and what that means. And so me sharing in this moment, reliving this march from Selma to Montgomery with young people who weren't even born when Rodney King happened, and their reaction to seeing this history as it was depicted through Ava's direction on screen is really interesting. This is this moment where we benefit from the wisdom of our elders, and we also have a responsibility to help our young people process what they're thinking and feeling as well. And I don't think a lot of people naturally have the words to do that. So films that can at least put us in the midst of a situation and give us a chance as families to watch, to react, and to discuss become incredibly important.
Well, Selma just came along at the right time. The Summer March was really triggered by the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson by the police there. Which is something that people tend to forget in terms of like how it ushered in the Voting Rights Act and things like that. So, I mean that's a very important film in the sense that it hit right at the same time as the first sort of Black Lives Matter things were starting to come into consciousness. So it did open up a debate. How can we be constructive about this? I just feel like, until there's real justice, that people aren't protected, police aren't given impunity when they commit these fouls, no one's going to feel safe. I mean, I'm thinking about, when we had Rain Pryor here, she was saying like she didn't like the idea of saying Black Lives Matter because it's reinforcing the idea that Black lives don't matter, and I before, I mean, this week especially, it seems like it's just reinforcing and creating a sense of fear within young people. If the only images that young Black men get to see of themselves are, if it's in the movies, committing crimes, dealing drugs, and then if it's on in the media, we're being killed before we're 20. And folks are getting away with it, then it sort of reinforces a nihilism,
And as we prepare to go into this break, this is why staying on Twitter while we're on the air sometimes becomes very important, because ladies and gentlemen who aren't on social media, you got to be stunned sometimes at what is happening in the world around us and how reluctant we are to confront our differences in political philosophies and social justice opinions, and how this manifests itself in our lives. And you wonder how we build up to situations like Dallas. Well, interestingly enough, I was just sent a link to a letter that was received by a Black law professor, they won't say at what school, where some of his students got together and wrote a letter about how they felt somewhat assaulted by the fact that he was wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt in class. I've got to read you just the beginning of this before we take this break so that you understand where we are as a nation, folks, and what we've got to work to get beyond. It says, "Dear Professor, we write this letter to you with concern about your inappropriate conduct at Blase Blah Law School. Specifically, you have presented yourself on campus on at least one occasion wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. We believe this is an inappropriate and unnecessary statement that has no legitimate place within our institution of higher learning. The statement you represented and endorsed is also highly offensive and extremely inflammatory. We are here to learn the law, which is underlined and italicized and bolded. We do not spend 3 years of our lives and tens of thousands of dollars to be subjected to indoctrination or personal opinions of our professors. Blah, blah Law School has prided itself on the diverse demographics represented within the student body. Your actions, however, clearly represent your view that some of those demographics matter more than others. That alienates and isolates all non-Black groups. The letter's 2 pages long.
Oh, I want to get one of those shirts. It
is it's a woo-wee. When we can't even state an opinion and have that be received for what it is, and then, move back to a space where we can actually talk about the significance of that, rather than people just saying they're offended and they turn it off and this is where we are. We got a long way to go as a society.
Yeah. Well, another movie, if we're going through the list of things to check out.
I was going to say really quickly, because we got to take this commercial.
Of course,
break.
yeah. Falling Down with Michael Douglas. That's another movie that deserves some reassessment in light of what's going on in 2016. It's about the last white guy in America, basically. He, something sets him off at a Korean deli and he just goes on a shooting spree. He just feels threatened. And I feel like that's a lot of people just feel threatened when people stand up for themselves. They're not used to it. So
yeah,
or speak out for themselves. I shouldn't even say stand up.
Well, there's a lot of conversation to be had. We are anticipating having a conversation during this hour with actress Tika Sumpter. She is playing First Lady Michelle Obama in a wonderful new film that will be in theaters very shortly. We want to talk to her about the trajectory of her career, but also the challenge of playing one of our national figures in this moment where it goes from just being a casual date with the new young associate at the law firm to building the relationship that leads to her becoming the First Lady of the United States. So that and plenty more as we continue with Reelblack Radio as the Mojo broadcasts live from the Coleman Regional Library at Chelton and Green. Please come join us if you are in the area. Much more conversation to be had, part of our Summer of Freedom series when we continue after this. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a little taste of Philadelphia's own music soul child from the album On My Radio. The song is called So Beautiful, and I use that as an introduction for our next guest on today's program because for those of you, again, who are on social media, then very shortly after President Obama's first inauguration ceremony, there were all kinds of Black visual artists who recognized the love that exists between our president and his wife, the First Lady. And there was a slideshow in particular for people who were collecting photos of them out on the campaign trail that they put together and because if you've ever seen pictures of the president and the First Lady together for state dinners or for other moments where it's just sort of them before a speech is being given or what have you, there is something special about that, the way that man looks at his wife. And many of us reflect on that and the strength of their relationship, how strong it has to be when you have both the relationship to try and nurture while you are also trying to be the leader of the free world. And many of us can't imagine being in that position, but we now have a film that helps to illustrate how all of that came to be, how a young Barack Obama, a young associate in a law firm comes to meet the woman, his sort of senior at the law firm, and decide that this is a relationship that needs to be nurtured.
Yeah, and we're always complaining that there are no Black superhero movies. Well, August 26th, we get the origin story.
That's right.
The beginning, how it all began, how the superpowers came to meet. Southside with You.
Yes.
Produced by John Legend and starring
Yes, our next guest, who regrettably couldn't be with us here at our live remote location, but is at our WURD studios, Tika Sumpter. Welcome to WURD.
Oh, man, it's such a pleasure to be with you. I wish I was there with you guys. You guys are having an amazing conversation over there.
Thank you.
We're listening over here. Thank you for having me.
I was going to say, my producer is especially sad that he's not there to look into your eyes while we're
That's hilarious.
I've got to say that I'm totally geeked about having an opportunity to speak to you, because back when I was self-employed, before I came to WURD as an on-air host, I became familiar with you, with your role on One Life to Live, and have delighted in watching you evolve your acting career through all of the film experiences, and now to be able to play the First Lady, who so many of us love and admire. It's got to have this last decade or so has been quite the journey for you, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean it's all the culmination of the walk, you know, and working really hard. And yeah, One Life to Live. I mean, that was my first real job where I didn't have to be a waitress anymore and work a million jobs to try to get by. But yeah, it was a great stepping stone, and it allowed me to learn a lot. And you know, I had to get into character quickly, but it all led to the road of this that I actually am a producer on as well. And so I'm excited for you guys to get to see this film.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a chance. This is Mike. I had a chance to see the movie. I really enjoyed the movie, the chemistry, the story.
Thank you.
You know, just takes a moment in time and just connects us all.
Yeah.
What attracted you to the material? How'd you find out about this?
Well, I was given it was only a synopsis when I saw it. It wasn't even a script. And I met with the director, who was inspired by them and their love. He was inspired by their look. He was also the look of, like, when they look at each other and you're like, what is that? And he was falling in love at the time, and he was inspired by this. And he's like, I was like, whoever wrote the synopsis, 1989, and the origin of their story, I thought is brilliant. And I called him every week to actually write the script. I was on top of him, like, did you write it? Did you write it? And he finally wrote it. I was blown away. I gave it to my agent, and I said, I actually had a meeting with him first. His vision was so clear, and I said, we're gonna make this. And he said that, I said, even if I don't get to play her, we're gonna make this film. And so we did, and we got it on its feet, and we got the financing, and yeah, and we made it. And I was grateful that my schedule worked out where I was able to play such an amazing person in the beginning of her career.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about that, because I think, we toss around these terms, director, producer, lead actor and actress, and we make certain assumptions about that process. But to be both in a space where you're developing the way that you portray this character on screen, but also being intimately involved in the financing and how this film got made, those are two very distinct and necessary jobs in order to be able to bring this film to light.
Oh, yeah. Very different. I mean, I had no idea what it took to become a producer. I just kind of did it. And I just wanted to make sure that the job of the producer is to get the vision of the director out there, to make it come to life, and to get everything he needs, the tools to make it great. And also, he was a first-time director, so to get people on board and for them to see my excitement and to see that I was confident in him, it was a big deal. So that was one thing, but then also preparing to become Michelle Robinson, who, there's no video of her from back in that time. There's no recording. So I read a lot of books, but the one that helped me the most was her brother's Game of Character, Craig Robinson. And it really just informed me on who she was at that time and her family and how they instilled such confidence in her and self-esteem. And, Barack wasn't her only option. A lot of the times they would say, well, he's not going to make it, So it's like, I love that. And the thing I loved about this film is, a lot of romantic comedies or romantic movies is the woman's always chasing after a man. And I love that he has to work. She's the prize, and I think it's important for people, women especially, to see us as the prize and that he didn't stop, but it was two great minds coming together in the beginnings of their career and seeing different things that they wanted to change about themselves, not just for each other, but for themselves. So I just love the complexity of both of these characters.
Right. And the movie...
I hope I answered your question. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the movie, it all takes place in one day. It kind of reminds me of movies like Medicine for Melancholy or The Before Sunrise, things like that. I mean, just really beautifully done. But then also, like, intricately textured with cultural references. You have the Ernie Barnes references, and then
Good Times.
Right thing, I mean, how important was it, to have sort of the Black cultural references informed throughout the piece for you?
Well, I think that was part of the thread of their lives. That's part of our culture. People are always like, well, how do you, I guess people are always like, well, how do you write, Black people? It's like, we do the same things that you do. We just, we sometimes watch different things, I think that was important because that's part of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. It would be like me talking about The Cosby Show or A Different World or something like that, now. But it was important because they affected their lives at that time. Barack talks about Good Times and JJ and Ernie Barnes, how that thread is together, weave together. So I love that that's highlighted in it, and it's showing the beauty in us in that way as well.
Yeah. Well, we've had a big conversation, and I don't envy President Obama's role, especially in these, in this week, and the fact that he's winding down his tenure, to be able to juxtapose how we understand him as a man and as a leader now with this moment of them coming together in a relationship and building the foundation for what would become the president and first lady, I think is important for us to continue to humanize what it takes to be able to serve in that capacity, to love people, but also to try and shape a world where we are keeping things in order for everybody else. And so it's got to, in addition to the roles that you played on both sides of the camera in order to make this film happen, the timing of this and being able to offer this story at this moment in history, I imagine that hit you pretty hard this week. Yeah.
I mean, one, I think it shows that we're going to miss them. Two, they have been the most accessible first couple I've ever seen. You know what I mean? Like the way they invite people into the White House, the way they she comes out and she dances to Beyonce, the way he, talks about, I just feel like the way they connect to the culture, I think it's really important. And I think this film is going to make people miss them even more, because you get in, you're like a fly on the wall to their relationship and kind of what happened in order for them to be who they are right now, and that they're human. He experienced pot back in the day, you know what I mean? And he smoked cigarettes. He's not perfect. And I think we have this thing in our society where we think people are perfect and they say all the right things at the right time. And I think it humanizes them, including her. What I love about her is she's unapologetic about who she is, but still flexible on wanting to be, to elevate herself and to help and not knowing exactly what she wanted to do at certain times. So I think, like you said, it definitely humanizes them and it winds down the clock. And I think it's something that we're definitely going to miss.
Definitely. And it's a beautiful film, and just how they illuminate each other.
Yeah.
There's in there where they sort of say the right thing to give each other strength. I mean, it's really an important film. It's just needed.
Yeah. And they challenge each other. And,
yes.
Things, that's the thing. Things aren't always just easy. You know what I mean? It's like, I think a lot of the times we forget during the courtship, we just want to listen, anybody's allowed to do what they want to do, but I was having this conversation. I think sometimes taking our time and actually having a real conversation and being challenged by somebody else will actually, help the situation rather than, we wouldn't be in as much trouble, I think, in a lot of relationships if we just take our time. And that's what I love about this film. It walks you through it. It's not, cut, everything's, it's not MTV style. It's really, let's walk, let's talk, let's get to know, and you get to be a fly on the wall for that.
Yeah, I mean, the movie would have worked even if it was just about Barry and Michelle from Chicago. But
Exactly. Oh, I'm so glad you got that. I'm so glad you got that.
You know, it's great. But, you know, I wish we had more time to talk with you.
Yes.
About having habits and looking forward to, like, you being more in the starring role, having, you know, taking the wheel.
Well, that's also the producer, you know, that's the other thing. It's like we were talking before we got on with you. You know, it's important to produce projects that, you know, not everybody's writing a lead for me. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to figure it out and get in this role myself. You know, I love when people are like, they casted you. And I'm like, well, I kind of casted myself. Yeah. And you have to do that nowadays. You know, I don't want to just be a best friend, or I don't want to just be, you know, have the second story on a show, you know what I mean, or whatever. I want to be in the forefront as well, and I want to tell stories that matter and stories that matter to us, and yeah, so that's where I'm at.
And don't want you to be a stranger. So
exactly, I was going to say, and like I said, since I've seen you since One Life to Live, I'm just thinking about these projects that you've been able to take on. So from that to Sparkle, to Ride Along 1 and 2, to the role that you played in Bessie, watching the way that you bring dignity to these characters, and that, you know, when we talk about cultural icons and where things fit into the stories that we are telling that are important to our lives, you've made us laugh, you've made us feel, and that is so incredibly important. So we want your star to continue to rise, and whether that means people are writing roles for you or you're producing and putting yourself in a position for us to get to know you even better on screen, we're glad that it's happening and want to see it happen for a long time.
Oh my gosh, I'm speechless. Thank you so much. I've been listening. I hope that I get to come back and actually be with you guys and actually talk about what's going on now and the craziness. But you guys keep doing the great work that you're doing. I really appreciate your support.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That is Tika Sumpter.
August 26th, Southside with You.
Thank you.
Yes, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and let you know about more films that you need to keep an eye out for. We're also going to talk about how all of this wraps into this restorative healing that is necessary for us in this moment in time where we are processing so much of what's happening in our community. Let's celebrate love and healing when we conclude today's Real Black Radio, part of the Mojo, broadcasting live our 2016 Summer of Freedom series here at Coleman Regional Library, Greene and Shelton. Stay tuned. For those of you who are eagerly anticipating Janet Jackson giving birth to this baby she has waited so long to have, then hopefully these remixes that we get a chance to play for you that conjure up the sounds of summer will be something that you can listen to in the interim.
Wait, Janet Jackson's having a baby?
Yes.
Did she freeze her eggs? I'm a little scared.
No, she's 50. Okay. And this is like the last hoorah. But when you've got a billionaire husband, I mean, at some point you might want to just go ahead and, you know.
I hope she freezes. Some babies, some 50-year-old eggs coming out.
You know what? Before you offend any of the other women sitting around this table, let's just leave it there.
Because she had enough money. Like when Control was out, she could have put a couple of them eggs aside.
Anyway.
And said, I'm going to wait till I'm 50 and I meet this billionaire.
Anyway. That was the stimulated remix of Janet Jackson's All Night. And as you see, they say hot. And because it is hot and humid outside. But I love that remix. And I really hope that Kwame decides that he's going to do some more of those songs, because he did a batch of them.
It's not out yet. But John Legend has an amazing song in the end credits for Southside with You. So
nice.
Whenever it comes out, you got to play that one. It's a beautiful song.
Yes. Speaking of parenting. Mm-hmm. You know, that he's enjoying new baby Luna.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and all that. But, you know, there's a lot to be said for us being able to gather together. I mean, we've joked about it, but the legitimacy of saying coming out to Real Black screenings or going to the theater, getting some free AC and seeing some things that sort of stimulate our minds and give us a break from some of what we've been dealing with
I can't
is important.
Vouch for the AC tonight, but we do have a show at the United Bank building at 7 p.m.
Can you at least vouch for fans?
It's gonna be, well, you know, it's usually pretty cool in there, you know. I mean, I you know, yeah, we'll try and get some fans in there.
sounded a little tentative.
It's a community screening. I just show up with the movie. So this week we're going to show 2 films featuring Aretha Franklin. One is called The Queen of Soul, which was a PBS documentary, American Masters documentary, written by Nelson George. Really good biography of her with lots of rare footage. And it's not on DVD. It's not on YouTube. The only place to see it is if you have a VHS or if you come out tonight, 7 p.m. And then we're going to tag that with a French appearance from 1971, Aretha Franklin Live in Paris. 1971 is a 20-minute made-for-TV
kind of concert film.
Yeah,
nice.
So, Aretha at her peak, and so that's tonight. I guess also, I should mention, only thing new on DVD this week is Suture. It's a special edition Blu-ray combo. I don't know if you remember this movie from 1994. It's with Dennis Haysbert.
Okay.
It's an interesting film. It's like a film noir. It's about a rich brother who runs into his long-lost identical twin and invites him over to his house and then promptly tries to kill him by blowing him up. But the guy survives the explosion. But he has amnesia, and the rich brother has stuck his identification and all kinds of stuff with him. So everybody assumes that he's the rich guy.
And Dennis Haysbert plays both parts?
No, Dennis Haysbert plays one of the twins. The other identical twin is played by a white actor named Mel Harris, I think is his name. So it just takes you on a whole nother level in terms of how you perceive the roles, because everybody in the movie is playing it true to form. It's very non-traditional casting, but the way the audience reads it affects how you interpret race. So it brings it on a whole nother level than what you were expecting. And it's really well done. Like if you like film noirs and stuff, it's done well.
I'm still stuck on the twins.
They play identical twins. They look at each other and they say, "Wow, we really look alike, don't we?" And this is, so everybody plays it true. Like they don't look at each other and not believe that they look identical. Everybody looks at Dennis Haysbert and says, "Wow, you look just like this other guy." There's a police lineup. They're showing photos. And she looks at the picture of the white identical twin and says, I think that's the guy. And then they bring him in the lineup. And she says, "Yeah, that's him." Like she doesn't pretend like there's no, but it really plays with your mind. And it's a good movie. And it was shot in black and white, which is also another layer to like the thing. So the movie's in black and white and it's about black and white.
That's
interesting. They restored it from the original camera negative. So it's in 4K. So it's crystal clear. There's a making of documentary. And they also include the filmmaker's earlier short film in the film because they were really into Hitchcock and things like that. So
nice.
So it's a really great package. It's out from Arrow Films and Video and our friends at MVD. And actually, if you go to Reelblack's website, we're giving away a copy of it this week. So
nice.
If you go to reelblack.com. And then the last thing, before I go, I have to say the thing out. I mean, Finding Dory's been killing it at the box office.
Yes.
I don't know if it's going to be supplanted. The big movie released this week is Secret Life of Pets.
Yes.
You're a big Illumination fan. You like the Minions and all the Despicable Me's.
I like animation, period, and I have a puppy. So there are all kinds of things that are attracting me to that particular film.
Well, they do an awesome job with all the reactions and stuff. Like if you have pets, if you're a cat person, if you're a dog person, they even have guinea pigs in this movie that have secret lives.
Yes,
and they have all that stuff is like
and
really.
Kevin Hart voices the bunny
as the white militant bunny who's trying to free the animals from the dog catchers.
Yes.
But he's good. I mean, a little bit of Kevin Hart goes a long way for me. So like, I was watching, I was like, okay, well, when is he going to show up? Like, when are they going to make him? And then he, like about a third of the way in, he shows up and then he just takes over the whole movie.
Because, first of all,
he sucks up all the air.
Anybody who understands how manic Kevin Hart is just regularly, if you've seen Real Husbands of Hollywood or any of his films, imagining Kevin Hart as the voice of a crazy little teeny fluffy but ready to down with all the humans and free my pet friends bunny you got to understand that that's going to be funny. It's going to be funny.
It's good. I mean, it's really, no pun intended, a Shaggy Dog story. Like the plot, you could fit in a thimble. Okay. And I was really hoping that it would take it to like another level, just as an adult watching the cartoon. But like if you have like I'd say like 4 to 10-year-old, they're gonna love this movie.
Right. It's not one of the strum on the heartstrings kind of animated films like Toy Story 3.
No, and it's not Zootopia where there's a whole another level working. It's very much at its base level. Louis C.K. does a really good job his voice work is really good. All the voice work is really good, and it's a distraction. I mean, it's not going to change the world, but if you're not coming out tonight because we don't know if we're going to have air conditioning. Go see Secret Life of Pets.
I wasn't trying to turn people away. I'm just saying I think there's going to be
a selling point. On a day like today, you want to go to the movies.
Right,
And you want to escape all this reality stuff, Fox News. You got to get away from all that. So.
Exactly. So we're glad that you are still out in the trenches, sir. Providing us. I mean, and people are going to want to see Aretha. So folks will be there
it's a good show. Yeah, and stay away from Tarzan. That movie bombed. You don't need that.
And the off mic conversation we just had during the last break, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, not that I would recommend Tarzan on any level anyway, but yeah, I'm totally convinced that we don't need to see it. For those of you who are hanging out around the broadcast table, we're going to give you an opportunity. I have tickets for both the Ty Tribbett show on July 16th, Saturday, July 16th at the Wilmore. And I've got tickets for the Temptations Review, Dennis Edwards and the Temptations Review, along with the Shy Lights, Stylistics, and New Birth, July 14th at the Dell East. So those people who have joined us here in and around our broadcast area, we're going to let you all duke it out for winning these tickets as we sign off today. Okay. We also need to go ahead, Mike.
I failed to mention new comedy club opens this week, The Punchline, which is owned by Live Nation. So they're bringing the top acts to Philly. So you don't have to go to Atlantic City to see Dave Chappelle or Russell Peters. And they have Bill Bellamy coming next week, and then later on they'll have Marlon Wayans and Deion Cole. And also
they need to give us tickets.
Yeah,
they need to advertise on Word.
Well, we're trying to hook that up. And then this weekend at the Helium Comedy Club is Rodman, who, everybody watch him on BET, also won Last Comic Standing. He's performing this week.
Nice. We also need to let you know, now we've been talking a lot today about, with all the heavy news that's happening in the world around us, that we need to be about the business of healing as much as we are about the business of activism. So we need to remind you that chiropractic maximizes the natural God-given strengths of the human body and its capacity to heal itself. So visit Dr. Lay at the Center for Higher Power at 150 Monument Road, Suite 207. Your first visit and adjustment are complimentary. That means free. For more information, to set an appointment, give him a call at 215-740-9791. And that will conclude another edition of our 2016 Summer of Freedom live broadcast here at the Coleman Regional Library. We will continue next week, next Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll be back out and we'll give you much more information about that early next week as well. We want to thank all the people who have joined us here in our broadcast space. Thank you, interns, for holding things down with our marketing effort here at the table as well. Coming up next for your noon hour today is a summary, a bit of an edit of Michael Cord's live coverage from the AME convention last Sunday. We want to make sure that you are aware that those of the AME denomination are celebrating their centennial here in the city of Philadelphia. And for those of you who might have missed some of the pageantry around the dedication of the Richard Allen statue last week, that you hear Michael Cord giving us some of our Black history as well as conjuring up that faith history right here in the city of Philadelphia. And Lord willing, we do this all over again, 10 a.m. on Monday, and hope you will tune in at that time. Remember, here on The Mojo, we always encourage you to embrace and explore your Black magic. Take good care, everybody.
You've been listening to a podcast of Real Black Radio with Mike D and Steph Renee. Fridays 11 a.m. till noon on 900 AM WURD. and 900amwurd.com. Follow us on your favorite social media like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for up-to-date information at 900 AM WURD and at Reelblack.